12:27 in Tulsa, Oklahoma. 911 operators received a call from an unknown caller. 911 operator, do you need police, fire, or medical? Caller, somebody just got shot. 911 operator, where's the person that shot him? Caller, I don't know. I was driving and I just heard the shot and I heard him scream. And I looked and I saw him lying there. He's lying on the ground and there's blood everywhere. He's naked. 911 operator, okay, let me get you connected with the MSA. Detectives immediately rushed to the scene of the incident. They met a dead body lying on the ground just as the caller said. 53 years old Michael Binder was born in Chicago and raised in Hawaii. He moved to Tulsa 17 years ago, living for a time with his mother and stepfather. Michael struggled with drug addiction for many years, but he was active in his church and was trying to turn his life around. Michael was struck once in the side of his head. Patrol transported a neighbor and the apartment leasing agent who called 911. While detectives Reggie Warren and Max Ryden continued working on the scene, two other detectives decided to go downtown to conduct interviews. From there, they will go ahead and start digging into the victim's past. Maybe they might get lucky with some information. An hour later, Detective Max Ryden gets a lead after answering a call to the victim's phone. Michael's friend Stuart said Michael planned to meet a woman earlier in the day. Detective Mark told other team members that Detective Max has been answering the victim's phone as it's been ringing. He told them there was someone that called that he's going to meet with that has some information. He said they were going to just get through those witnesses. While Detective White gets started with Michael's neighbor, Detective Leatherman interviews the leasing agent. Detective Ronnie, my name is Ronnie. I'm a detective here. I'll just ask you to tell whatever story you have and we'll go from there. Mike's neighbor, I was in my car and I heard someone screaming help, and then I heard something that sounded like a pop. Then, I saw two people running. Detective Ronnie, were they running from the apartment where the shooting happened? Mike's neighbor, yeah. I saw them just driving by. Then, I saw his body, so I parked my car and got out to see if he is okay because I knew who he was. Detective Ronnie, okay. Mike's neighbor, I saw his body there and I didn't know how to react. Detective Ronnie, can you describe the people you saw running as best as you can? Mike's neighbor, honestly, I saw just two white people. One of them had blonde hair. It may be down or up. It was kind of long, so it was a female. Mike's neighbor, yeah. The other guy is a white man, I think. I didn't see their faces. Detective Ronnie, have you noticed them out there before? Mike's neighbor, no. Detective Ronnie, have you had any struggles with him? Mike's neighbor, no, not with him. He is really quiet. I remember he was just trying to get his life together. I know he had a past with drugs because I did his background check, but he was not violent. He was all about peace. Next door, Detective Mark is ready to interrogate another neighbor of Mike. She said she parked outside his apartment moments before the shooting. Detective Mark, all right, so just tell me what happened. Mike's neighbor, I saw a guy and a woman going towards that apartment. They knocked and they went in. About 30 seconds later, I heard the guy yelling for help. After that, the gun went off. After that, they ran off. Detective Mark, were they white or black? Mike's neighbor, both are white. The male has a beard and short hair. The female has blonde hair. Detective Mark, okay. Mike's neighbor, both of them were very skinny. Detective, maybe they used drugs kind of skinny. Mike's neighbor, yeah. Detective Ryden returns from speaking with Michael's friend. Detective Ronnie came out of the interrogation room to address other officers. He said both witnesses described the suspects as a white male and a female with blonde hair. He said other than that they couldn't give any additional identifiers. Detective Ryden returns from speaking with Michael's friend. He said the victim was in some program where he gets help getting an apartment and a job and stuffs like that. He said the guy he just talked to known as Stuart said he's back into selling meth. He said it looks like he would have lots of girls over there doing drugs. He said Stuart was with him all night. He said a little after 4 a.m., he went to his house, and he said while he was there, he was going to re-up with his plug. Michael gave Stuart the name of the woman that supplied him with drugs. He said he was supposed to re-up for 4 to 5 ounces. Michael told Stuart that he was afraid of her. He said he left around 5:30 a.m., and the plug had still not gotten there. The detective said they need to have access to Michael's phone. Michael's phone received several Facebook message alerts. Unfortunately, there is a lock pattern on Michael's phone. The team hopes to find out if Michael was in contact with his supplier. Detective White has to wait to get Michael's phone records and Facebook Messenger history because of the lock pattern on Michael's phone. Detective Ryden notified Michael's mother and stepfather. His parents said he is the most non-violent person you will ever meet. They said he will rather give someone his money than fight over it. His parents have lost 2 sons in the last 2 years over drug issues. Detective Mark, hey, what did you find out? Tell me you have some videos. Detective Reggie, no. The apartment complex building has one surveillance camera that doesn't work. The detectives were shocked that the camera could not capture anything in broad daylight. Detective Mark said he will revisit the area. Maybe some witnesses may come up and start talking to him. 20 hours in, a detective said he will make a flyer that he will rake to the complex. He said some of the people over there might have a camera in their residence, and he will like to have a bunch of it to be able to hand out with his phone number on it. And he will also be able to put the word out that they are looking for some information. Another detective said they should take the victim's phone along so that if anybody calls, they will have his contact right away. Detective White drove back to the scene of the incident to see if he could find some witnesses he could talk to. As soon as he alighted from his car, he saw a young man walking and he approached him. Detective White, I'm working on this homicide that happened yesterday. Witness, I heard the shot. Detective White, did you see anybody run after you heard the shot? Witness, no sir, I did not. Detective White, I'm going to give you this flyer. My number is there. If you hear anything, let me know. While surveying the crime scene, Detective Mark saw an apartment that has a camera. He immediately rushed down to the apartment. Detective Mark, hey there, I noticed you have a camera. House owner, I do. And unfortunately, my internet was shut off. Detective White, okay well, disappointing. But thank you. While Detective White entered his car and he was about to move, a call came through the deceased phone. Detective White, my name is Detective White. I noticed that you've been calling Mike's phone. Had you heard what happened to Mike? Caller, I heard the news this morning and I was afraid it might be him. Detective White, yeah, it's him. How well do you know him? Caller, I was homeless at one time and I stayed with him for a while. Detective White, where are you at now? Maybe I can holler at you and you might be able to help me out. Caller, I was headed over to his place to see if he was there. Detective White, I'll be right across his apartment. Okay. After some few minutes, the caller arrived and Detective White allowed her into his car. Detective White, I am sorry you are going through this. Caller, he was a good person. Detective White, honestly, I have not heard from one person that he was a bad guy. What has he been up to? Caller, I don't know. I know he has talked about how he has been ripped off a couple of times. Detective White, okay. Did he tell you how long ago he got robbed? Caller, probably a month ago. Detective White, did he give you any of the details? Caller, he said a woman ripped him off. Detective White, do you know who she is? Caller, no, I do not. Detective White, I know he was selling meth, but do you know who he was supplied by? Caller, no, I don't. I want to know who did this. Detective White, I do too, and he's got some nice parents that are devastated. As the first 48 hours wind down, Detective White updates Mike's father. He told him he hoped was that people would have started calling him, but that has not happened yet. He said they were not going to stop and they will continue to work with everything they have. Mike's father said that sounds great and he appreciates the efforts of the detectives. In the first 48 hours, Tulsa Homicide responded to the shooting death of 53 years old Michael Binder. They learned that a white and a blonde woman were seen fleeing his apartment. They also heard that Michael may have returned to selling drugs and planned to meet a supplier on the day he was murdered. They got a warrant to search Michael's phone and Facebook page. They have searched for witnesses at Michael's apartment complex, but have come up empty. The next day, someone called Detective White's phone and left a message. Detective White played the voice note for Detective Ronnie so. The caller said he wanted to remain anonymous, but he has some information about the shooting in Tulsa. He said he knows the girl and she told him what happened in detail last night. He left a phone number that Detective White can use to get to them. Let me try to call it, Detective White told Detective Ronnie. Detective White called him and he agreed to meet with him. Detective White and Detective Ronnie headed to the meeting point where they agreed to meet with the tipster. The tipster said Michael's supplier is staying at a nearby motel. 4 days after Michael's murder, the warrants team sets up surveillance on the supplier's motel room. A few minutes later, a car drove to the door of the supplier. A white male with a gray t-shirt came down from the car and knocked on the door of the room. He was let in by someone who the detectives were not able to identify then. A few minutes later, the white guy came out of the room with a female loading the stuff off. They both entered the vehicle and started driving. The detectives tracked down their car and arrested them. They and the detectives headed back to homicide. Immediately they arrived at the homicide. Both of them were taken into a separate room for questioning. Detective White and Detective Zanoni entered the investigation room, where the white female was been held. "Hello, my name is Detective Jason White, and this is Detective Zanoni over here," he said. "I'm working on a murder. That's what we do." He said they know sometimes in these investigations, people do stupid things. Female suspect: "Yeah, I see where you are going with your investigation. I was in his house. When I left him, he was completely fine." Detective White: "Let's stop. Whose apartment did you go to?" Female suspect: "Mike." Detective White: "The day he got murdered." Female suspect: "Yeah, that day." Detective White: "What time were you over there?" Female suspect: "It was 7:50 a.m." Detective White: "Did you ever go back in that apartment that day?" Female suspect: "No, not at all." Detective White: "You went over there with whom?" Female suspect: "With a man and another woman." Detective White: "Why did you go over there?" Female suspect: "He wanted me to come over there and see him." Detective White: "For what?" Female suspect: "Just go and visit him." Detective White: "Here is the decision that you have to make. Either you want to go down the road of I want to savage my life and I want to have a life, or you want to go down with somebody else potentially for the rest of your life." He said he doesn't think they had any issues other than he was a little bit behind on his. She interjected by saying he didn't owe her any money. She said he didn't owe her a single dime. Detective White told her she will go to jail for murder. She interjected in a sober mood saying she had no idea who killed the victim. Detective White asked her where she was. She said after she left Michael's apartment, she and her friends spent the afternoon at a flea market. Detective White: "If anybody tells me that you are going to confess you were there, then that is a flat-out lie." Female suspect: "Absolutely, it is a lie." Detective White: "Do you have any objections to us looking at your phone?" Female suspect: "Yeah, you can look." Detective White: "All right. Sit tight and be patient." Detectives started going through her phone. They found a text between her and the friend she said she met up with around the time Michael was murdered. The text corroborates her alibi. Detectives discovered the information they got from the tipster was not correct. They know it's frustrating, but they had no other option than to release the two suspects. 2 weeks later, Michael's Facebook Messenger records finally came in. Detectives found a series of messages between him and his female. The name of the female is Lena Rocher. The messages were sent before the homicide happened. The conversations were like hanging out. There was somewhere in the conversation where the victim told his female friend that he was going to give her 2 zips if she makes it to his apartment within an hour. Detective Mike asked Detective Ronnie what a zip means after he read that part of the message. Detective Ronnie told him a zip means an ounce. Lena arrived at Michael's complex 30 minutes before his murder. Detectives were able to get her picture and her location through the Facebook Messenger chat. They got to know that she is a blonde-haired lady who lives in Sapulpa. Detective White immediately called the Sapulpa PD for a background check on Lena. The Sapulpa PD told detectives that she has some stuff on her. He said she had no prior felony convictions, but she is a person of interest in a missing firearm investigation. The Sapulpa PD told Tulsa detectives that Lena could be wrapped up tonight if they want it done. Tulsa detectives told him that will be great. Detective White told them he will be more than happy to come to them. An hour later, Sapulpa PD brings in Lena. Detective White and Detective Ronnie made their way to the Sapulpa police station to try and talk to Lena and see what she has to say. Detective White and Detective Ronnie made their way to the interrogation room as soon as they arrived at the police station. Detective White: "Hello, young lady. I do not know the reason why they brought you here, but I wanted to talk to you about something else. Do you know how to read and write?" Lena: "Yes." Detective White: "And you read what is on my shirt and it says homicide?" Lena: "Yes." Detective White, do you have any idea why I want to speak with you? Lena, yeah, honestly, yeah. Michael Binder, Detective White, yep. Lena, he was my friend. I helped him once. They wanted me to go over there so they can just take his grocery home. Detective White, okay, who are they? Lena, Nicholas Gibson and Ruthie Blair. Detective White, how do you these guys? Lena, through Samuel Washington. Detective White, how did you guys end up over there? Lena, honestly, I was supposed to be getting in some stuff. Meth. And they wanted to try to take his stuff from him. Detective White, tell me what went down when you got to the apartments. Lena, I knocked on the door and he let me in. And then I went in the bathroom, which is where I was when they came in. Detective White, did you intentionally leave the door open or unlocked? Lena, yeah, I left the door unlocked. Detective White, okay, knowing that they were going to come behind you. Lena, yes. Detective White, did they come inside the apartment on their own? Lena, yeah. I came out because I heard all the noise and they told me to get on the fucking floor. Those were their exact words. He got up and took off running. He went to the door and started shouting for help. I heard a bang. Detective Ronnie, who's the one that pulled the trigger? Lena, Nicholas Gibson. Detective White, and then, what did you guys do? Lena, fled. She said they fled in a car that she parked nearby. Detective White, what is the discussion in the car after you left? Lena, I'm just told that if I throw them under the bus, basically the same thing will happen to me. Detective White, let me go through this again. Just correct me if I am wrong. You went inside by yourself. How was he dressed? Liana, he was fully dressed. And then I went in the bathroom, which is where I was when they came in, and he had got down into a towel, I guess. Detective White, was there anything that was supposed to go on? Lena, oh yeah. He talked about trying to have sex with me and stuff. Detective Ronnie, why did you want to take his stuff, and how did you know about him? Lena, because they had me get them stuff before. Detective White, from him. Lena, yeah. She claims Nicholas and Ruth had her get drugs for Michael in the past. Detective White, are there phone numbers in your phone? Lena, possibly. Nicholas's number should be in there for sure. Detective White, all right, give me a few minutes. Detective White and Detective Ronnie left the interrogation room. Detective Ronnie said Lena will be charged with felony murder. He said that we'll start working towards getting an arrest warrant for both of her accomplices. Both Nicholas and Ruth have prior convictions for burglary. Detective White said their efforts would now be to find both Nicholas and Ruth and bring them in safely. 4 days later, Detective White gets a lead. He got a tip about Samuel Washington's investigation. The tipster stated that Michael and Lena have had some sort of relationship. White said the way he is hearing it is that he potentially directed Lena to do the robbery. An hour later, Detective White brought Lena back to homicide. Detective White, you already went out on a limb and told me everything as far. Liana, yeah. Detective White, I'll just get to the parts that I'm wanting to shore up. Who did you tell about this situation? Lena, my mom, of course. Detective White, anybody else? Lena, that's the only other person I mentioned it or talked to about it. Detective White, did you make a phone call right after this happened or talk to anybody? Lena, I had somebody call me. Detective White, who? Lena, Samuel Washington. Detective White, this guy right, while showing her his picture. I am not going to waste anybody's time here. Do you have a relationship with him? Lena, he was my boyfriend. Detective White, so that is what I am getting at. I do not want you to sit there and protect that guy. Liana, no, I am not trying to protect anybody. He has told me to do things that I... Detective White, okay, let's get into that. Tell me exactly what he told you to do. Liana, to do whatever it takes to get the money to bond him out. Lena claims Samuel wanted her help to get out of jail. So, he hatched a plan. He planned that Liana would rob Mike. He wanted her to set it up for Nick and Ruthie to go do it. Okay, give me a quick minute, Detective White said while he and Detective Ronnie left the interrogation room. He asked Detective Ronnie what he found. Detective Ronnie said he is looking at murder and conspiracy to commit a felony. Detectives decided to have Samuel transported from jail for questioning. Later that day, Samuel was brought to homicide. He was taken into an interrogation room for questioning. Detective White, first of all, my name is Jason White. I am a homicide detective. You had said something that you want to clear your conscience when we were in the car coming down here. Isn't that right, Samuel? Yeah. Detective White, what do you want to clear your conscience about? Samuel, I talked to Annie. Detective White, you referred to her as Annie when we are talking about Lena. Samuel, when I was in jail, I called her and she answered the phone. Her first words were everything went bad. And she said, he's gone. I said, who's gone? And she said money or Mike or something. This guy Mike, if I remember, she knew him from the past, and she admits she wants me for about getting him. Detective White, what does that mean? Samuel, rob him. That was way before I was even in jail. I told her Ruthie and Nick usually do stuff like that. Detective White, so you guys have had some discussions about possibly the robbery before you were arrested. You ended up getting incarcerated. Were there any other calls that made or any discussion between the two of you or her about wanting to rob him? Samuel, it was pretty much. If she still wanted to do that with Nick, he could help her. He said after they got locked up, he told Lena to work with Nick on a plan targeting Michael. Detective White, okay, meaning the robbery. Samuel, yeah, robbery. I didn't know anything about any murder. Detective White, you may be in a little bit of trouble. If you hadn't mentioned something to her about that situation, that guy would be alive, you know. Samuel, if I get charged, what would I be charged with? Detective White, it will be with murder. Probably a felony murder. Based on the kind of putting the wheels in motion, and then somebody dying in the midst of that, it becomes felony murder. Do you see what I am saying? Samuel, yeah, okay. Detective White, I will holler at you in a quick minute. 2 months after Michael's murder, detectives got a call in the morning that Missouri authorities were able to get Ruth Blair into custody. A tipster called and said both of them were at a house that was nearby. Officers went there really quickly and they managed to capture her, but they didn't find him. Detective White and Detective Ronnie went to Missouri to question here. Detective White, hey there, young lady. Ruth, hi. Detective White, are you doing all right? Ruth, yes. I was scary. Detective White, yes, I know, and you know what? This is a scary situation. But you have to tell me what's up. I already know what's up, but I need to hear from you. Ruth, all I know is Leanne has been texting and calling my old man for a week or two. She had this master plan to go over there because he was supposed to have a lot of money. And Nick asked for a rundown. Like, what's the deal? She said she will go and then the rest can come in. She said to pull into the actual complex. Lena went in by herself and she left the door unlocked. Ruth said she was behind Nick. Nick went in first and he opened the door and she shut the door. Detective White, what was said at this point? Ruth, he said put your hands up. So the dude jumps out and he got a sheet wrapped around him. He walks right in front of Nick and it all happened so fast. Before you knew it, he's got his hand on the doorknob. Nick said don't do it, don't do it. So the dude swings the door open and run out and yelled for help. And then Nick went to pistol whip him. He just wanted to hit him with it. When he went to him the first time, his finger slipped, and the gun went off. Detective White, what did the three of you do next? Ruth, he and I ran out. Went and got in the Jeep. It took her a little longer to come out because she was rounding off everything she could find. She said Lena grabbed drugs from Michael's apartment before fleeing. She said Lena and her didn't get the wallet and the wallet was the goal. Detective White, did you ever see her again? Ruth, no. Detective White, did Nick? Ruth, no. She said she and Nick went their separate ways. She said she was so afraid she was not going to see him again. The next day, Detective White gets an update from Springfield PD. They finally located Nicholas Gibson. Nicholas Gibson was charged with felony murder in the first degree, and he is awaiting trial. Ruth Blair was charged with felony murder in the first degree and she is awaiting trial. Lena Rocher was charged with felony murder in the first degree and she is awaiting trial. Samuel Washington was charged with felony murder in the first degree and he is awaiting trial. Criminal charges are often dropped or reduced and the suspects are presumed innocent until proven guilty.